Peter Doddema. I'm the priest here at the Church of the Ascension in Frankfort, and I am excited because there are such awesome people here with me today. I have Nicole Doddema, who is...
I'm the priest's wife, but I also am a social worker, and my current job is with the Department of Advocacy in Boyle, Danville, and Lincoln County.
Awesome. And Kristi Buffenmyer, who is...
I work at an agency called Everyday Matters, providing community supports to people with developmental disabilities. You
were saying that March is...
In the Rword, March is the month that has been designated to end the word retardation for the stigma that goes along with that. So it's kind of exciting that we're here having a discussion about it.
Will you say a little more about that? Because I'm almost 50 and I was raised with the words mentally retarded.
Yes.
So can you say a little more about what we're trying to do now for people like me that grew up with those words?
I think that the biggest thing is to realize that everyone has different abilities, you know, and I think the movement really is towards how we all have a different ability, and it's not so much a disability or a mental retardation, but more of how we all encompass and walk the earth together in a different capacity. And I think that's what it's really truly about.
Wonderful. And April is Autism Awareness Month. And one of the main reasons that I've asked these folks to be here today is to talk a little more about autism, to understand what it is, and to understand a little better how we can be more welcoming as a church for people on the autism spectrum, and also because some of our folks on the autism spectrum serve in church to help us be more comfortable with that and with what they're doing and what's going on there as well. So could you both tell us a little more about autism for people coming in off the street? What's autism? What does it mean?
Now the DSM-5 has defined autism as an autism spectrum disorder. That's because there's so many different ways that it's expressed in people. A lot of the things that we're comfortable with is that it's characterized as in the DSM-5, it says persistent impairment in reciprocal social communication and social interaction. And then you may also see the restricted repetitive patterns of behavior. So we're looking at the social aspects and also maybe some behaviors, but they're expressed so differently in each person. And I think that's why some people, you know, when you're in the congregation or when you're out in public, you may see some behaviors that aren't as usual as what we would see in everyday. And it's how we respond to that and how we include each individual and those that are dealing with autism or have autism.
Absolutely, and I think with that, you know, it's remembering that this can allow us to have a compassion for all, and that someone with autism has the capability to hear vividly and see color in an extravagant way, something completely different from us, and remembering that routine and the same people in their lives. If church starts at 10:30 and they're here at 10:15 every Sunday and something goes awry and they don't make it till 10:30, that can throw everything into a panic for them, almost an anxiety that we all have. It's just magnified by 100 for them. And being able to kind of see that, if you know that Nicole comes to church at 10:15 every Sunday, and for whatever reason she came in at 10:25, you may want to kind of keep an eye on her and make sure that her anxiety isn't taking her to the place of, I need to go someplace else to kind of catch myself, get myself together, and reintroduce me into my normal Sunday routine.
So I'm hearing you say just being mindful of what folks need and giving them the space if they need to step out, breathe a little bit. And
yes, you can make it more difficult for them by approaching and constantly saying, what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong?
Yeah.
You just need to know that something is wrong.
Okay.
And very calmly say, hey, you want to walk with me for a second? You know, and knowing that not everyone communicates the same way.
One of the things that was difficult for me sometimes, and I've had to catch myself, is if I'm working with someone, right now I work with them when they're in the jail or they're in court. Of course, that's a lot of anxiety.
Yes.
And so I'll talk to them, do an interview, and ask them questions. And a lot of times there's like no response.
Yes.
It's just flat, we would say flat affect, or
Affect,
there's
yeah.
no kind of reaction to the face, but you know that they're anxious or upset. And it throws you off a little bit when somebody doesn't respond to you. So what would you recommend in those cases? Like if you're wanting to comfort somebody, but there's no response.
That's a good question.
I think really and truly you have to be mindful of people's personal space also, and just to say, I'm here, do you need to step out for a second? I'll be more than happy to go with you. A lot of times you can see those folks kind of get up and start to move.
Yeah.
Sometimes not. Sometimes they will, really kind of shelter themselves wherever they're at and block everything else out. When you start to see the increased anxiety is when you may have the behavior situation where it might not be acceptable to everyone else, but that it's acceptable for them. And so you just have to know that, everybody charging towards a person, that doesn't work for any of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So being aware, but actually doing less. Instead
Yes.
of rushing in to do something,
Right.
just being present and
And we all
available.
want to do something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
we
what
wanna fix it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what society teaches us. If you have that compassion for other human beings, you want to help, you want to fix, but sometimes just giving space is the best reaction.
Yeah.
And having that flat affect, that is very true in just about any situation.
Right, the person would have that.
Yes,
Yeah,
because
okay.
they really kind of emotionally disconnect.
So that could be hard for people that want to get to know somebody for the first time. If I'm introducing myself to someone, say, Jim, and Jim has autism, and I want to get to know them, and like we do the peace,
Yes.
or we would say hello, or things like that, what's the best thing to do?
Most importantly is to just remember the personal space. So when we give peace, we shake hands, give hugs, maybe even a kiss on the cheek. The best way to gain trust is peace. No
Just say-
personal,
just say
just
peace.
peace and move on.
Okay.
And you'll gain that trust to eventually, one day they'll shake your hand and you're going to think,
Yeah.
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 because they've gotten that trust, they're used to you, they've seen you every day, and they know that you respect that boundary.
So if I say, peace to Jim, and then nothing happens, there's no response, and then the next Sunday I do it again, I shouldn't always expect for there to be a smile or
No.
a response back or something. Just say peace, and then eventually.
Yes.
But that's that consistency, would you say?
Absolutely.
That just doing something in the same way, or
Yes.
so they're familiar with you. That's how people become familiar with you.
And trust you.
Okay, and trust
Yeah,
you.
Yeah,
Okay.
most of the time it's a trust issue because of their personal space and boundary. And like I said, it's really and truly, if people would just think of it as everyone has their own ability and way of coping with things. We all do. And instead of it being a disability or a different way, we just need to think that outside the box. We're not all going to fit in the box. We're all outside trying to make our way in, and to be mindful of that. And really and truly, there's lots of folks in church that maybe don't want to have that physical contact.
That's true.
And so just kind of being mindful of that. And we all get to know each other through time.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a really good point, and it's beyond the scope of this interview, but the more I get to know this congregation, some folks are abuse survivors, has nothing to do with autism, but people are not comfortable with touch. And so I think you hit on a really good point there. We need to care for one another, but also be cognizant of what kind of signs are you giving me, I think that's great. Now, you mentioned something, Kristi, a couple of paragraphs ago about maybe some folks on the autism spectrum seeing colors in different ways or functioning at a really high level in some areas. I know as just a person coming in off the street, if I talk to somebody and they don't respond, I'm thinking, is anything going on at all? But you're saying that there could be some really high level
Some
things
processing
happening. Could you say a little more about that?
I just feel like folks really have the ability to be very cognizant of their surroundings, and when their ability is different than ours, especially on the autism spectrum, vision to see the colors vividly and to hear the organ more soundly than we may. That also goes along with hearing everything else. Maybe a light's buzzing that doesn't normally buzz, that's different, that doesn't normally happen. When you're in those situations, you really have to remember that because it's different from the way that you surround yourself with other people, doesn't mean that it's a wrong way. It's just different.
So it sounds like a person living with autism could also get overloaded pretty easily. If you're getting all that sound input,
Absolutely.
I'm not even aware of the sounds of the lights and other things, but
Yeah.
that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Most definitely, and it's really kind of overstimulating, which causes what we would consider not socially acceptable behavior. you know.
Will you say more about that? Some of my friends who are on the autism spectrum, there are things like that where there's rocking or other stuff. Sometimes I see people doing that in church. Will you say a little more about what's going on there?
That's usually a calming mechanism for them when they feel, anxious or something is different than it is on a normal. That it's a way to kind of bring that anxiety down. We would typically box breathe. You've heard of people box breathing. You'll take a deep breath in, hold it, let it out. Whenever you're in anxious situations, you know how to calm those with those.
Yeah.
To keep that behavior what everyone else considers socially acceptable. That's how we deal with those situations.
Okay.
Or we remove ourselves from things that make us anxious. And in those cases, they don't really understand why things are different and go to those calming things. You'll see some folks that will hold their ears because of the light buzzing that doesn't normally buzz, or the organ's out of tune and they know it. Or they don't have the ability to have their art supplies with them to be able to use those colors to really describe how they're feeling. And that's one thing I've learned with folks with autism is they'll really use color to kind of describe.
That's interesting. Okay.
I didn't realize that. Yeah.
To kind of describe how they're
They're
feeling.
Oh, okay.
So some of my friends with autism will do things like the rock back and forth, or I have a friend who will just, when he gets anxious, will shake his hand. So that's just a calming thing.
Yes.
Like you might say to me, just take a breath when I get overstimulated. Yeah.
Yeah, and don't be scared of that. I think that, people are, oh gosh.
Like, what do I do?
Yeah, what do I do?
Again, how do I fix that?
Exactly. How do I fix? Yeah.
Why are they doing that? We're in the middle of mass. Why?
Right. I don't understand that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just another time to be, kind of, okay, something's awry that we don't notice, but they do.
Yeah.
So one of the things I know that we're really trying to do is how do we create an inclusive space, in the church? I mean, we've talked about how we can be more understanding, and not let that get into the way of our worship, of seeing something different or just acknowledging that people have different ways of worshiping. But how can we include people with autism or people with other abilities? How do we include them in worship and help some people that aren't as understanding or accepting? How do we help them to be more accepting of differences like that?
Well, I think this is a great start. I think you all coming to a roundtable discussion is
Good.
phenomenal. I also think that continuing conversation and maybe opening a door for anyone that wants to learn. Maybe we could do something like that to have them be part of the actual worship. I think that just is patience and time and consistency. Bobby, for example, he doesn't have autism, lives with us. He does have a developmental disability. His abilities are a little bit different than ours. And he wants to be involved, but he doesn't know what to do to be involved. And we've talked about different things that he could get involved with. Breakfast, I think he would love to help with breakfast. And having those conversations with folks, we've got a lot of people that come from the Stewart Home School, and it would be great to maybe have a gathering and say, hey, these are some different things.
That's a good idea.
And having a mentor for
that's
each
very
person,
good.
like maybe
That's very
Nicole
good.
could take Peggy and work
Yeah.
with Peggy on how do you set the altar.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. If they happen to be interested in those things,
Well, that's
having
awesome.
having a mentor And look, our church loves to give back and loves to help. And I could really see the congregation taking folks in and saying, let's go work on this together.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah, so identifying some things that we do in the church, because we don't always stop and we just kind of try to jump in and get it done.
Right.
But identifying the little tasks and, the different jobs that we do. And I love the mentor idea. That's great.
Yeah, and even getting some of the youth involved. I know we've got some youth that could really, step in and maybe kind of help with those things.
So taking some of the work that we take for granted around here, we're just going to get it done, breaking it down into different steps, and then
Absolutely.
presenting it and helping other people figure out if they want to be involved with that.
Yeah.
And then with Nicole's background, I mean, I know you had to do task analysis and things like that. I mean, that's really what it kind of boils down to. Where are they? What can we do to, and maybe just do one task at a time with setting the altar, or one task at a time with breakfast, and then moving and building on that. To enrich the lives of the congregation.
Oh, I think that's fabulous.
And get them involved into the actual worship, where they're just not coming to church and leaving.
Yeah,
true.
That'd be great, yeah. Okay, so if I'm Jim, the person off the street, and I come in for Sunday worship, and like a lot of churches we're used to, we do the same thing at the same time every week. I sit in the same pew, all that stuff. And I have someone, and I sit down, and one of the folks serving up front, whether they're an usher or an acolyte or whatever, is someone, whether they're on the autism spectrum and they have some other differences, visible, behaviors that are different. What would you say to them, to just the person in the pew, to just kind of step back, take a breath, and realize that we're all worshiping together and it's going to be okay?
I think the biggest thing is to remember that, we're all different.
Yeah.
We are all different, and no matter who it is up there that's serving, I mean, everybody has their own way of doing
their
it.
quirkiness.
I mean, every single
like Peter
person.
never knowing the page number.
That's right. This Sunday in church, I announced the page number that we were on, and two people in the congregation said, no. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, and always, if you're trying to help, always speak calmly and give direction. That's, the more abrasive you are, the more you're going to cause an issue, and that's with anybody.
Yeah.
So I have noticed, for me, what's worked is that, like you said, speak calmly, speak in a kind of just a straight tone, not a lot of inflection, but just calmly, and give space for them to react. Like if there's a task to do, then give the direction, and then give space for them to respond, because the individual is not always going to pick it up quickly.
Exactly.
Now, I don't do that with Peter, but I expect him to respond immediately.
That's
but
true.
I need to be more patient sometimes, to step back.
That's true.
So, I mean, these are good tasks for everybody, good ways of responding to everybody that you first meet or you are working with. But,
Well, I'm glad you said that, because there are times during worship, like the peace, where we stop in the middle and we greet the people around us, where, as a quote-unquote normal person, I get into a rhythm of hello, 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 and if I'm giving the peace to someone, it may take a little longer, and
for them to respond.
Step back.
Yeah.
And thank you.
I'm just thinking about those things, about just giving space, calm, and just be patient and repetitive.
Yes.
Sometimes, I mean, if they're not picking up on it, then let's go over it again.
Exactly.
And just, I think that we're sometimes in trying to get it done and trying to move on to the next thing, that we forget to just step back and allow somebody the time to respond.
Yes.
But especially when you're in worship, you want things to be perfect. You're doing the Eucharist. I would imagine there are a lot of different steps that you have to do, and you're like, okay, let's go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And things that come to mind for me too is like crucifers and torch bearers. It's the same thing
Right.
every Sunday, but to get into that routine and to have it be the same and consistent.
Yeah.
You can't do it this Sunday and not do it next Sunday. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like there needs to be,
Right.
if I'm going to do it this Sunday, I've got to do it
That's a very good
next
point.
Sunday.
Yeah.
And I've got to keep doing it and then I can go on to a schedule.
Okay.
So if we're going to make space for somebody, we've really got to make space for somebody.
Exactly.
Not just we're going to do it this week and then.
Right, and not just, today you're the crucifer.
Would you all just talk a little bit about why you do what you do? I mean, what really motivates you? Why do you go to work every day? Because I know being married to Nicole for 20 years now, I have learned a lot. I came from a family that was had no idea about mental health or about abilities, disabilities, behavioral health, anything like that. And when I came to her, I remember there were several times where in my ignorance I said things about the clients that she was working with that was just ugly and offensive because I didn't know any better. I've learned a lot from you, and the love that you have for folks with differences has definitely transformed me just day by day. What makes you all do the work that you do? What motivates you?
I have to say, for me, I love exploring different characteristics of people and different stories that people have, and I just love being able to help them live the best quality of life that they want to live. And I say what they want to live because I try to get to know them well enough to know what they really enjoy doing, and I want to be able to help them go through the steps for them to be able to achieve that. And that's why I do what I do. Not because I want that for them or they should live a certain way, but because I find people so unique. You know, we have people in our lives that have incredible abilities and that have autism, that, you know, have other mental health issues, that have anything. But there's something, like I said, so many different colors, so many different characteristics, so much that they can provide in this world. And that's just really cool, you know? And that's why I do that. I don't want people to be isolated. Like I was reading up on what autism meant, and that originally, you know, in 1943, when the term was coined, that it's meant self or to be isolated. We don't want people to be isolated at all. And no matter if there's mental illness, if there's severe anxiety, if there's, you know, any kind of different way of life, we don't want people to be isolated. And so that's why I do what I do and keep fighting for them.
Yeah, me too, absolutely. I mean, I think that's why all of us do this job. I mean, everyone should have the right to live a normal rhythm of life, whatever that normal is for anyone. I mean, that's why I do what I do, is because I want everyone to be afforded the opportunity to have a normal rhythm of life, whatever that is for them, whatever it is for you, whatever it is for you or for me or for the people that we work with. I wish that everyone could have the opportunities that we're able to give, you know, to folks. And isolation is the biggest thing. You know, I've been doing this long enough to see institutions close and people be able to have community lives. And I've actually got 8 folks at Everyday Matters that came from an institution 15 years ago that I have watched just blossom into fantastic, wonderful community people that, you know, they're in their 50s and 60s now, but because they were born with a disability, parents didn't know what to do. Let's go to the state hospital. I mean, that's why I do this, and same for Nicole. I mean, I think that anyone who gets into this field, that has to be the root of why we're doing it, is to be able to afford those opportunities to folks.
Absolutely.
And it's fun.
It's fun.
There you go.
No day is ever the same.
That's the
And
truth.
then you're never going to complete a to-do list.
Yeah.
You know, that's the really cool thing. Like, some people really have to mark things off. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
No.
You can have the best laid plan, but it is going to go south quick.
Yep. First thing. First thing. It's going to be totally different. Yeah.
No
absolutely.
2 days are ever the same.
Absolutely. And the other part of, I think, why we want to do this is that we want the church to be inclusive. We want people to have a safe space to come to. So often, even schools do their best to provide opportunities.
Yes.
Community tries their best to provide different opportunities. But we need to start in the church and have that be a safe space, and to be able to mentor and be able to, you know, enjoy the
Really be
differences.
inclusive.
Really be inclusive. And if we're going to be role models and invite people to come and see what we do, we need to be role models for the whole community. So,
Absolutely.
All right, so in conclusion, thank you for watching our video. For final remarks, Kristi, anything you'd like to share?
I think the biggest thing is, like you were saying, that everyone is a part of the congregation, and we can all work together to make everyone comfortable and inclusive here. And if anyone ever needs anything, we're always available to talk.
I love that.
And if you'd like to be a mentor, or if you'd like to help, people learn more about worship, then reach out to us as well, because I think we're really excited about those opportunities. April 2nd is a good time to start, too. That's World Autism Awareness Day, and you can wear blue is the color for autism awareness. So every time you wear blue, think about what can we do to reach out and help everybody feel included in our congregation.
Absolutely.
In our service.
When I stand up at the front of the church, when I lead worship, one of the things that brings me tremendous delight is just to see everybody doing their own thing. We have so many different people doing so many different things. Everybody looks different, sounds different, acts different. It's a beautiful thing to see everybody there together, just worshiping. And my hope, as we understand and talk about these things a little more, is just that everybody gets their own version of that, their own version of, this is my home, this is where I belong. And to just be comfortable with the people around you, to begin to interact and understand, to get past the social barriers that we're raised with that say, uh-oh, somebody's different, I better not ask questions, or somebody's different, I don't want to be around them, or something like that. So really just anything that draws us together and brings more of that joy is really kind of my goal there. Last question, websites, Facebook pages, things that we can be looking at?
Everyday Matters LLC is a Facebook page that folks can go to as a resource. Also, feel free to email me if you're not comfortable speaking in person, kbuffenmyer@yahoo.com. Also, anytime that you have any questions or anything, feel free to stop me, grab me. I'll be more than happy to spend some time with you speaking.
And you can also look at autisticadvocacy.org as another site. I'm sure there are many others, but any way that we can learn and grow and help each other is great.
Yeah.
So, and I loved how Kristi said that everybody has their own rhythm, their own uniqueness. So as a music person and background, let's get that rhythm together and make beautiful music as a congregation.
Yeah.
Kristi, Nicole, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Remember, if you enjoyed this, please like, comment, share, and subscribe, please, so that we get this out there and more folks are thinking about this and acting in that way.